Hello and welcome to the Top 3. This is a new show where Rust builders compete for the title of the best. Today, you will see the 3 best bases that the show participants managed to build over the past month. And not only will you learn how to build each of the 3 bases, but I'll also show you which builders' ideas turned out to be real candy, and where they built just an absolute shit. Oh, and I don't think I mentioned this before. Right, I almost forgot the most important thing. The participants of each episode will share a prize of $150. So trust me, I will analyze the bases very earnestly. Ahead, you will find a review of each of the 3 bases, during which I will highlight both successful and unsuccessful decisions. In addition, I will compare all 3 bases according to pre-established criteria, and show what I would personally change in each base. The final choice of the winner can be influenced by every little detail, from a wrongly oriented wall to the need to build a couple of extra foundations during construction. Let's not waste any time and move on to the first base. Despite its small size, this base stands out with its vast compound, which includes 8 large furnaces. The structure of the base is extremely default. The first floor is designated for the main area with a bunker, the second floor features a spacious open core with equally spacious loot rooms, and the third floor is entirely dedicated to shooting and combat. There are 4 entrances to the compound, all of which are absolutely identical and represent a classic gate room with narrow peaks inside and windows facing outside. Upon entering the territory, we see turrets above each entrance. The furnaces, along with additional walls, form a second layer of defense that will slightly slow down the raid. The base itself is symmetrical and has 2 identical entrances on either side. Right behind the entrance door awaits the first candy of the base, a bunker that opens with a twig roof. Inside there are 3 chests and there is an identical bunker on the opposite side. We ascend to the second floor via the sloped roof and enter the open core. There are many garage doors here, so I will open them all at once. Inside the open core, there are 2 cross turrets, 2 closed furnaces behind the windows, a couple of lockers, and 4 full loot rooms in squares. We descend to the first floor. To do this, we need to wake up on the sleeping bag and break the twig. Behind the bunker, we have a garage door, 2 HQM doors, and a couple more garages. The second candy for this base comes from having a full loot room in the main area. We return to the second floor and check the shooting area. The ascent to it is done via a classic shelf, and the author also added a shooting spot for retake. On the shooting floor, there are noticeably fewer garages, but there are still 2 cross turrets that control the entire floor. There are also 2 bedrooms, each containing a bed. The shooting area combines both default windows and wide gaps, as well as sloped roofs. As is fitting for any worthy base, there are classic peaks to the roof in 2 variations. One is through the same sloped roof and the other is through a window. The base is symmetrical, so each type of peak is mirrored on the opposite side. For the good opportunity to defend the roof, a well-deserved candy is awarded. Additionally, following the teachings of Alone in Tokyo, there is complete control of the open core. This includes 2 ramps with the ability to shoot through the entire core area, as well as shafts leading down through which grenades can be thrown. There are also a couple of gaps for controlling opponents. All of this together gives another candy to this base. Access to the roof is through a garage door, and there are also 2 entrances through internal passages. Each of these has an additional vending machine accessible via a drone, along with a couple of windows for extra control. 4 exits to the roof are also a huge advantage for the base, or in simple terms, it's candy, as well as the ability to trade safely. Another little candy. The peaks of the roof also turned out to be quite impressive. Various embrasures, wide gaps, frame peaks, and different unconventional combinations of roof and lower floor peaks. A roof that is very comfortable for defense also deserves a candy. As you may have noticed, the level of bases has significantly increased compared to the last episode, but this is no reason to overlook the huge number of shortcomings of this structure, which we will now thoroughly go through. I find the compound of this base unjustifiably bulky. in addition to the insane 8 furnaces, there is also a whole bunch of unused space inside. Everything that extends beyond this base, namely the gate rooms, turrets, furnaces, and the overall layout of the compound, does not impress me at all. The turrets are unprotected, the field of view is weak, any fool can climb into the territory, there are no barriers inside, and you can't peek outside. According to the format, I will show my vision of the compound in the next part of the video, but for now, I will only give this base double shit for this mediocre courtyard. Another dose of criticism goes to the complete absence of shotgun traps. No matter how you look at it, shotgun traps are an important element of base defense. I like the second floor in this base. I would leave everything here just as it is. The only thing that bothers me is the lack of a workbench on this floor. This is quite strange, but there is no tier 3 workbench in this base at all. The inability to craft syringes while in the open core, next to all the main loot rooms, is complete nonsense. I also see one obvious bottleneck in this base. The base has 2 entrances, 2 ascents to the open core, 4 exits to the roof, 4 peaks to the roof, 4 peaks in the open core, and 2 shafts for dropping grenades. But there is only one way to descend into the open core after respawning on the beds, or to ascend to the shooting area from the open core. I see no reason to leave this oversight unaddressed. One single passage between the key floors in a symmetrical base is unacceptable. Third floor. Right off the bat, it's a problem due to respawn issues. The base can comfortably accommodate 3 players, as confirmed by the 3 sleeping bags in the main area, but the bedrooms are only designed for 2. The second shit is that the shafts for dropping grenades are completely unprotected. Yes, it's very convenient to smoke out raiders from the open core with grenades, but it's even easier to kill the owner of the base in the main area with the same grenades. There should definitely be hatches here, and without them, I consider this solution to be poor. Additionally, there is no space for a battery in the base. That's unfortunate. What can I say? And the most significant shortcoming of this base in terms of defense is the savings on HQM. The protection of the main area is not good. From almost every side, you can reach the main area with 23 rockets, by blowing up 1 metal wall and 1 HQM wall. I don't see anything terrible about this. What is alarming is that I can clearly see 3 ways to reach the TC bypassing the HQM. The first path looks like this. We have 1 regular door, then 2 metal walls and a garage. This way, we can open 1 external bunker, the cupboard, and the internal loot room for 23 rockets. The second path is through the external loot room, 3 metal walls and 2 garages. A bit more expensive, but still bypassing the HQM. And the third path is downright crazy. We break foundation 1, break foundation 2, and that's it. The TC is down. Then we just need to drill through these 2 metal foundations and blow up 2 more TCs for 8 rockets. Yes, those guys built by the author break with 4 rockets. It's enough to simply break the stone half walls. In total, for 24 rockets, we get the privilege of building in this gigantic base, which is just triple shit. Never skimp on HQM for foundations, dear builders. To be honest, I didn't expect to find so many shortcomings in this base, but it makes it all the more interesting for me to bring it up to standard. By the way, I have already done that and am ready to show you my version of this base. The most global change occurred in the compound. In this format, I try not to alter the general structure of the base, so I had to work with the existing footprint. First of all, I replaced the cupboards with the most proven and classic ones, with 2 windows and a regular door. Now, they can't be blown out with 4 rockets. The 2 main gate rooms moved closer to the base on the foundation, and I completely removed the other 2, replacing them with a regular turret pod. The number of furnaces decreased to 4, and the territory itself was divided into 4 independent sectors. Passage between them is through a chain fence. These mesh walls also protect the turrets on the sides. The furnaces are still a little problem, and you can also additionally block the passages around the base with double doors if desired. And all this is built significantly cheaper than in the author's version, of course. Here's a comparison of the total cost of maintaining the cupboards in the author's version and in my version. We enter the base. At the entrance, I placed a couple of shotgun traps. An alternative option is to put a hatch here, opening which during a raid will turn the entrance into a safe shooting spot. On the second floor, there are minimal changes. I replaced 1 locker with an additional workbench so that you don't have to descend to the bunker every time to craft basic items. And the base also got a second ascent to the shooting area. is located in the same place as the descent to the main area. Next to the first ascent, there is a shotgun trap. A small detail: I would remove the frame from here. Without it, in an emergency situation, when the enemy has occupied the open core and you have run out of weapons upstairs, you can open the locker without exposing your ass. With the frame, you can't do it that way, even though jumping with it is a little more convenient. On the first floor, the materials have changed. I upgraded the foundation under the TC and the wall behind the workbench to HQM. The workbench here is now level 3, since Tier 2 moved upstairs. And the obvious change is the appearance of a battery in the main area. Previously, there was a blocked buffer in its place. As for the shooting area and the roof in this base, I didn't touch them at all. I admit, I don't really like these garages at the top, but I haven't come up with a more elegant way to organize the ascent. I also haven't figured out where to organically place a couple more bedrooms in this base. If you decide to build such a base for 4 players, I can only suggest closing these windows with glass and placing a bed with a locker inside. You can also sacrifice a couple of loot rooms in the open core, replacing them with classic bedrooms, but then you'll have to spread the chests on the floor, otherwise there may not be enough space in the chests. There remains only one problem: how to build this base. However, don't worry about that, because the complete construction of this base, without accelerations and shortcuts, is already waiting for you in the description. Build it with pleasure, it's a cool base. But is it as cool as the second participant of this episode? Let's take a look right now. Presenting base number 2. The second base is slightly larger than the first, featuring 6 external cupboards, 6 large furnaces, and 4 gate rooms. The first floor of this base is classically dedicated entirely to the bunker and honeycombs. Unlike the previous base, here we have a full 3 walls cupboard defense. The second floor is designed for those who love many chests. A lot of chests. The third floor is mostly one large bedroom with 4 beds and 4 lockers. From here, there are also a couple of peaks into the open core, with exits to separate shooting rooms on each of the 4 sides. And there are 2 exits to the roof via a corridor. The roof of the base is also spacious, with wind turbines placed on the outer perimeter, and there is a non-lootable vending machine at the top, a couple of turrets, and several lockers. We enter the territory through one of the gate rooms. Here we have classic shooting spots inside and a locker. Behind the fence, there are turrets that control at least 2 entrances to the territory. The furnaces, like in the previous base, serve as an additional barrier on the way to the base, and the compound, like in the previous base, is not divided into sectors. Although in this case, the passages are very narrow, which helps with the defense of the base. I couldn't find any blind spots for the turrets, as there are a total of 8 of them on the territory. And besides the regular entrances, let's also take a look at the combat areas. Inside, we have a couple of beds, shooting spots outside, and lockers with batteries. We proceed into the base, immediately going up through the furnaces. We pass through a rather long maze, and can already see the open core through the window. We go inside and open the garages. I won't even try to estimate how much loot can fit here. Not only are there 9,000 various boxes, but there are also 2 vending machines in the center for storing loot, all guarded by 2 turrets behind fences. Behind one of these fences is also a descent to the main area. We jump down, and after passing through a few doors, we find ourselves in a fairly spacious main area. Here we have 2 loot rooms, another spot for a workbench, and the main cupboard. Now we return upstairs and head straight to the 3rd floor, to the bedroom, which resembles a barracks. There are also 2 cross turrets here, and behind these 2 doors are the shooting spots for the open core. Behind each garage is a passage to one of the shooting rooms. And there is also a door to the roof. For control, there is also a combat door like this one. There's really no point in showing the roof of this base. It mainly features default peaks and their variations. For defense, there are 2 turrets in default positions. This base deserves praise for its solid 3 layers of walls leading to the cupboard, external combat areas for 4 players, a 2-layer compound structure, absolutely incredible capacity, both in the open core and the main area, as well as for the spacious protected floor with beds. I really didn't like the complete absence of shotgun traps in this base, which, considering its compound, is a real crime. The base is quite lacking in terms of retail. Essentially, we only have a couple of peaks in the open core and two not so great peaks to the roof. The roof itself, along with all the shooting spots, is also pretty poor. The absence of a complete shooting perimeter is very disappointing. The exits to the roof here are absolutely useless. There are only two, and both are arranged in such a way that while you're exiting, you're exposed. And because of the garage door, raiders have complete carte blanche for a go in deep. I'm also confused by the material choices in this space, specifically the complete disregard for HQM as a material. I agree that fully covering the main area in HQM would be quite expensive in this case. But I believe that upgrading the ceiling is absolutely necessary, because otherwise, a couple of simple routes can lead to the cupboard, for just 16 rockets. Completely upgrading the ceiling of the main area to HQM in this case would only cost 68 HQM. In addition, I would also upgrade a couple of walls near the cupboard and the foundation it stands on. The cost in this case wouldn't be exorbitant, and the protection would significantly increase. Another thing that disappointed me was the external combat areas. Their presence certainly adds value to this base, but it would be nice to have some kind of shooting control over the internal territory. Otherwise, what's the point? You can shoot at an enemy from the roof outside the compound, so there's no need to spawn outside. The batteries in this base are only located in the external combat areas, and they can simply be broken from the street, disabling all turrets in the base even before the raid starts. A terrible horror. A shit for each useless battery. Also, limiting movement around the base during a raid wouldn't hurt. Especially in the case of this base, achieving such a limitation can be done completely for free. My version of this base looks almost identical to the original on the outside. Nevertheless, I still have something to show you. Let's start with the modified compound. Here we have additional double doors in some places. They are needed so that when the gate rooms are opened, the passage around the base is blocked. These doors can be connected to Rust Plus and opened with one button during a raid. Gun traps will also come in handy here. There are also spots for shotgun traps throughout the compound. Some are quite simple, while others are quite good. The combat areas no longer have any batteries, only lockers, and I've covered the windows with glass so that no naked can break our lockers from the outside. The entrance to the base is now also through a double door with a gun trap for a fool on the left. There's another control trap on the ascent. Then we go inside, where there's also a great spot for traps, but we'll go to the open core. Two gun traps also found a place in it, and the only change that happened to the open core itself is the appearance of a window in the middle. If earlier the vending machines could be opened just like that, now you'll have to break the window for this. We climb even higher, where we had a large bedroom before. I suggest placing mixing tables here, and I still consider the general bedroom a very unsafe solution, albeit convenient. Moreover, separate combat areas for each player are already in this base. You just need to move the beds with lockers there. Thus, to deprive players of the main respawn points, you'll have to demolish the entire floor. Plus, now from each bedroom, you can reach the roof in seconds, which is also an advantage. And you've probably already noticed that the peaks into the open core have become open, and two garages now lead up. The exits to the roof in this base, as I said, don't seem very successful to me, so I decided to simply increase their number. Now there are 4 of them in the base, and thanks to the new 2, we got these 2 little gaps for shooting. If desired, you can put an embrasure outside and the gaps will become wider, but then you will also be more visible. I suggest improving the original 2 entrances with this empty box. Thanks to it, you can calmly go up to the exit, totally safe. And if you want to peek at the roof, it's enough to just remove it. Alternative options include placing a bed or a repair table to peek through a thin slot. And since the wind turbines are standing on the external cupboards, I see no reason not to put the SAM sight in the center of the roof. In addition to the fact that it itself will shoot down some of the MLRS rockets, the 2 triangles on which it stands will also protect the roof. And we completely forgot to descend to the main area. Among the changes, in addition to a couple more spots for gun traps, there is the main battery number 1 and behind it, battery number 2. If desired, the second one can be placed in a less protected place, somewhere on the upper floor to power different turrets from different places. The ceiling in the main area is also now fully armored, and the room with the cupboard has also become stronger. In my opinion, the base turned out to be quite good. And you can build it today, because the full construction is already available by the link in the description. The third base looks the most innocuous of all. It has 4 external cupboards, an empty territory, an open roof, and a couple of wind turbines. However, structurally, this base is the most protected, as both the first and second floors consist of a tiny circular main area, surrounded by 3 layers of walls on each side. The second feature is that the cupboard in this base is located on the second floor. The third floor is a combination of a huge open shooting area and a central loot room, and the roof is a completely open platform with 6 turrets on the sides. Access to the territory is through one of 2 identical gate rooms. Inside there are 2 gun traps, and by removing the glass, you can control a half of the compound. Behind the second door is a chain fence and 2 turrets, each of which is also behind 2 layers of fence. Above our heads is another gun trap, and another one is slightly to the right. At the top of the gate room, there are drop boxes. We walk along the territory. In front of us is the external combat area. Behind the first garage is a gun trap, and behind the second is a bed and a chest or locker. From here, you can also shoot directly without going outside. But keep in mind that there is a double mesh here, which bullets cannot pass through. Nevertheless, you can, for example, quickly repair a turret or reload it from here. Overall, the full combat areas on the territory of the base are definitely a candy. The entrances to the base are located on 2 sides. Behind the double door is a flame turret with 2 gun traps and a hatch above. Such an entrance significantly complicates an online raid on the base through the doors. And because right behind the hatch there is another gun trap and turret waiting for us, even raiding this base offline through the door will be difficult. The shooting floor itself turned out to be very spacious and open. There are peeks into the territory through a wide gap, as well as various peeks into the distance. One of the batteries is located behind armored glass here. We enter the main area. Behind a couple of doors is the main working loot room, as well as the main battery. Behind the armored door is a bunker on steps, and below it is a barrel and a couple of sleeping bags. Right behind another armored door and glass is the cupboard, and behind the cupboard is the bunker itself. On the first floor, we are greeted by another trap, 5 barrels, a workbench, and 2 more closed barrels behind glass. Now let's fly to the very top. There are 2 exits to the roof in the base, arranged through a regular jump, and there is also the option to jump onto the siren lights and check if anyone is on the roof. At the top, there are also several barrels in the corners, 6 turrets, 2 SAM sites, and a couple of wind turbines. In terms of peaks, it's quite sparse here. There are only narrow gaps under the base and the possibility to climb onto some roofs. But interestingly, there are 2 garages, each with a vending machine. You can sell items through drones there, which is nice. For what I would like to praise this base, good shotgun traps. They are scattered both outside and inside, and while not many people would likely place so many, at least we have options to choose from. The turrets on the territory also raise no questions. They have virtually no dead zones. The fences are well placed and baiting is inconvenient. Definitely a candy. Structurally, the base is very good. The 2 lower floors, which essentially contain all our loot, are reliably covered by 3 layers of walls, and thanks to the bunker above, it also becomes very expensive to reach. For a good balance of defense, another candy. Additionally, this base has 4 hidden loot rooms. I will show them during the full construction. I won't reveal them in the video so that they still have some value. But I will give a candy to the base for them. I can't wait to cover this base in shit. The compound of the base is absolutely poorly thought out. Yes, the turrets are good, and there are combat areas, but other than that, it's just a circle surrounded by a stone wall. There are no partitions, no separate spots for furnaces, and considering that there are 4 boxes in the gate rooms, it's unclear what these fields are supposed to be used for. Next, the furnaces. In this base, all the furnaces we can find are located right here. It's the weirdest placement, starting from the fact that they could be accidentally destroyed by a helicopter to the fact that these furnaces are visible from outside the base. Shit. Spawn points. This base has none, literally. There are 2 sleeping bags by the cupboard, 2 beds in the booths on the territory, and that's it. No separate combat areas, no bedrooms, the author didn't even bother to throw a couple of beds on the roof for good measure. There's simply nowhere to spawn in this base, and that's shit. Storing loot in the base is also quite difficult. There are only 2 decent loot rooms, plus the base will struggle to function without the DLC with barrels. Also puzzling is the fact that in this extremely narrow main area, the workbench is located at the very bottom. If you are in the shooting area and want to craft syringes, you need to make your way through this entire maze and then climb back up. The next question is about these turrets on the roof. I don't understand this whole structure at all. What's the point of these frames that simply limit the turret's field of view? Why are these 2 turrets even needed if there are already 4 in better positions on the roof? Shitty turrets in general. The peaks to the roof are just a disgrace. It would be better not to have any at all than such pathetic ones. If the opponent somehow manages to destroy all 6 turrets and occupies the roof, the chance that these lights will allow you to kill him is close to 0. First, the shootout will start much earlier than you climb up to them, because the roof is as holy as a sieve. And second, it's simply an inconvenient peak for such a small distance. Shit. And the last thing for which I will give this base a shit is the material choices. First of all, the base turned out to be very expensive. Only 2 players can comfortably live in it, but at the same time, it competes in price with much more capacious bases. And because of this, I don't understand at all why the entire shooting area and the entire roof were rolled in metal. Okay, I can understand that the shooting area is in metal in case of shooting down a helicopter. But what's the problem if we leave the upper roofs in stone? Or for example, there is a battery behind glass. This glass breaks with 4 rockets. Then why upgrade the window and wall to metal? The same question applies to HQM. There are as many as 3 window openings in the house upgraded to HQM, but none of them make sense to upgrade above metal, since the window will fall out much earlier. And here's the opposite case. We have a wall here that will splash from anything, and it leads to the cupboard. It would be great to upgrade it to HQM. I think there are enough examples to give this base 2 shit points with a clear conscience for terrible material choices. There are a couple more things I don't really like about this base, but they don't deserve a shit. The location of the SAM sites and wind turbines is not very successful here. Flying up in a helicopter from this site, we can perfectly bait rockets at the wind turbine, and then repeat the same thing from the opposite side. It's great that the author placed the wind turbines on the external cupboards, but still, this way, they are quite likely to be broken by someone. The good news is that almost all of these problems I've identified can be solved. Another good news is that I've already done it, turning the author's version of the house into my own. I'll say right away, there are a lot of changes here. As you can see, the 2 external cupboards are now connected by squares. This is because I moved the gate rooms closer to the base, making the territory not so huge. This saved 6,000 stone on the walls. We walk inside and immediately encounter a new turret. Yes, the territory is no longer as open as it was before, so I moved 2 turrets from the roof of the base to the territory. As you can see, furnaces have appeared inside, which partially block the passages, and 4 fences divide the compound into sectors. The author's turrets are still behind the double fence, but now this fence completely covers the turret. I also slightly rebuilt the combat areas, but that will be a little secret for those who decide to try building this base. There are still 2 entrances. They are still arranged through a hatch and protected by a gun trap and turret. But now the hatch is triangular instead of square. We go upstairs, where a turret awaits us. It still controls half of the shooting area, but now also shoots through gaps at the territory around the base. The shooting area has these pixel peaks. From them, you can also shoot at the roof without jumping on the lamps, and some new slots have appeared in the shooting area, which is now also divided into 4 sectors using garages. I tried to change the main area very carefully, since I already interfered quite a bit with the structure of the base. I added a second workbench here. The main area is very narrow and cramped, so having to go down every time to craft something is definitely torture. There are now 2 sleeping bags here, upstairs, and another spot for a sleeping bag below. There are also 3 furnaces here, which can be replaced with a second sleeping bag if desired. And under the grill, there are now not 1 barrel, but 3 electric furnaces. Below, there is another spot for a furnace, and at the very bottom, I just added a box and another sleeping bag. As an option, you could also replace this wall with a window, placing a couple of barrels, 3 furnaces, or a vending machine behind the glass. And the Achilles heel of my version of the base is the exit to the roof. In 2 squares, instead of a peak, I managed to create this kind of jump. I hate them with all my soul, and would confidently give this base a shit for it. But in the choice between 2 such peaks on the siren lights and 4 full pixel shooting spots, I definitely choose the latter. By the way, I also improved a lot on the roof. The shooting area has become a bit more diverse with a couple of mixing tables added. The SAM will no longer fight with the wind turbines, and if you think they are visible from the street, don't worry, that's not the case. I left 2 turrets here instead of 6, but added something much more important: 2 combat rooms with lockers and beds. From them, you can carefully peek at the compound, shoot at the roof by removing the glass, or simply exit through 2 doors. As for the wind turbines, they are now slightly off to the side. I placed them 1 floor lower, but don't worry, as there are now 2 fewer turrets in the base, and you will definitely have enough energy to spare. To be honest, I liked this base the least before the renovation, but now I like it the most. It is still very cramped, sacrificing comfort for protection. It is still unlikely to live comfortably in it with 4 players, and it is still a bit expensive for 2 players, but still, it is so good. By the way, regarding the cost, the modified version is a third cheaper in terms of metal. That's a significant difference, and all of this together allows me to say with great pleasure and pride that I left the complete construction of this base in the video description. Build it with pleasure. The base is fire. The initial assessment and improvement of the bases are complete. Now we move on to the most important part. It's time to compare the bases of today's contestants and place them on the podium of the top 3. I still evaluate the bases based on a system of criteria, each of which considers the key characteristics of each base. The assessment is based on the author's versions of the bases, as we are evaluating their skills, not mine. Regarding durability, we have a clear leader in the form of the third base. I found no gaps in the protection of this base, and although there are few loot rooms in this base, each of them is well protected. Both of the other bases deserve at least a shit, as both the first and the second require only 16 rockets for the cheapest route to the cupboard. Build cost. I remind you that this includes not only the overall cost of the base in resources. I take into account the average consumption rate of the base, the cost of closing bunkers, if any, the necessary components for construction, and the blueprints. The first base definitely earns a candy for this criterion. Good materials, aside from excessive savings on HQM, a good consumption rate, and a reasonable number of garages and vending machines. The third base definitely gets a shit. It is unjustifiably expensive even for its level of protection. As for the second base, it managed to achieve the highest average consumption rate despite having 6 multi-TCs. It seems that the wind turbines are placed on the outer TCs, and almost all the shooting spots are also on them, yet it still has an average consumption of nearly 22%. This is due to the presence of a whole ton of half walls in the base. Additionally, there are as many as 14 turrets, which also hits the wallet hard. In short, shit. Complexity. I would like to highlight the third base right away. Building it is a pleasure. It is easy to remember, and there's no need to divert anything. There are only regular wide gaps. I can't give a candy to the other 2 bases. The first one is not very memorable. You need to divert the small gaps twice for the bunkers to work, and overall, its footprint is not the simplest. In the second base, there are a total of 6 multi-TCs on the freehand bunker, which, in my opinion, is just ridiculous. The multi-TCs in this episode didn't work out well at all. In the first base, there are some pathetic multi-TCs that can be broken for 4 rockets. In the second, there are tons of cupboards, but they are completely useless. They are made of stone, and for some reason, the frames are metal, and they don't share consumption well. In the third base, there are garages for no reason, even though there are no turrets inside, and a regular door would have been quite sufficient. In short, the third base is easy to build, while the other 2 are acceptable. Capacity. Now the first 2 bases will take revenge. First of all, the third base only gets a shit here, that's obvious. The second base is completely out of competition. There is just a ton of furniture here, and there is still a lot of free space left. The first base is not as capacious as the second one, and this becomes especially noticeable when you try to place an additional combat area somewhere. I wouldn't say the base is cramped or small, but there aren't many good protected spots in it. Passive defense. This is how the base can fend off a raid while you're sleeping soundly. The first base is generally fine. Yes, the turrets on the territory are not the toughest, and it's unclear where the battery should be placed, since the author doesn't have it anywhere. But still, the base defends well. The second base is also not perfect in terms of offline raiding. There are many turrets in it, and they all control each other, which is a plus. But this base has no bunker, the main area is not covered in HQM, and there are no gun traps in the base. And the worst thing is the batteries that can be cut out through the windows. And the third base. The gun traps are good, the turrets are fine, the batteries are hidden properly, and the cupboard on the second floor can be a surprise. But the base is extremely quickly and easily raided offline. No one in their right mind will hit it from above, because there are lots of turrets concentrated there, and the HQM ceiling is visible from the outside, and the base is simply blown away with rockets along the walls at one point. By blowing up 2 floors, the raider gains access to the main boxes and the TC, and by drilling up they will reach the remaining loot. It's quite strange, but it's the first base that turns out to be the leader in this criterion. Active defense. Judge for yourself. The first base. A full open core with tunnels for grenades. A great shooting area that allows you to control the entire compound and shoot at the raid tower. 4 full peaks to the roof and 4 ascents to it. This base is simply created for online defense and definitely earns a candy for this criterion. Now the second participant. There is also an open core here, and peaks into it are also present. There is one general bedroom, losing which the entire group completely loses the ability to respawn with weapons. The turrets do not cover the entire roof, there are dead zones that are not controlled from any window. Most likely, one volley of MLRS will completely clear the roof. And the peaks for its control in the base are quite depressing. The third base. There is no open core, there are no combat rooms in the base, the peaks to the roof are only for the sake of it. Access to all the loot is through one door, losing access to which you can completely drop out of the defense process. The third base is a clear outsider, designed more for offline raiding than online defense. The scoreboard is filled out, and now Jimmy is joining the game. That same neural network in Rust that will turn all these candies and shit into points. You asked in the previous video how it works, and of course, I can't help but answer. Jimmy simply looks at the strengths and weaknesses that I highlight during the review, and also compares the participants' bases with thousands of other bases around the Rust world. This allows him to evaluate each base with a single precise number. And while we're chatting, Jimmy has already started his analysis. As you can see, the numbers are already running, and I'll still have time to remind you that there are no ads at all in this video, but there is a link to Patreon in the description. There you can support me financially and learn how to build bases from this episode as well as from the previous one. The numbers disappeared, which means Jimmy is ready to show the results. According to the detailed analysis, third place went to the Urbies. 194 points and $25 in the piggy bank. Second place goes to Nate and his eponymous Nate 2.0 base. It earned 269 points in the overall ranking and brought the author $50. With the victory in the second episode of Top 3, we congratulate the participant with the wonderful nickname Pleasure of Killing, because his base, the Shark, scored 293 points and brought the builder $75. Yes, in the second episode, the number of points clearly increased compared to the pilot, but this is just the beginning, more is to come. This format became possible solely thanks to my Patreon subscribers. Thank you very much for watching this video, and, as usual, until the next videos.